In this video, we're going to look at sampling distributions for proportions. So just like with sample means, we can take several samples from a population and calculate the proportion for each sample. This would be the proportion that they answered a certain way or the proportion that had a certain characteristic. When we're dealing with proportions, it's when we have a categorical type of data. We would use means if we have quantitative data. So we can calculate the proportion for each, and that makes a sampling distribution. So we need a mean and standard deviation for our sampling distribution. The mean is the population proportion P, and that's going to be given to us in the problem. We calculate the standard deviation using this formula. Square root of P times 1 minus P divided by N, where N is the sample size. So our first example here, we're asked to find the mean and standard deviation if P equals 0.82 and N equals 80. So my mean is just the value of P, 0.82. My standard deviation, I calculate using the formula above. So I'm going to plug in 0.82 for P, 1 minus 0.82, and my N is 80. Now, 1 minus 0.82 is 0.18. And if I punch this into a calculator, I get 0.0430. Now, pay attention to where my stat lab wants you to round if you're entering in the value of the mean and standard deviation into a homework problem. If you're entering them into Minitab, generally going 3 to 4 places after the decimal point at least will make sure that you're getting an accurate answer. Question 2 says a general social survey reported that 56% of American adults saw a doctor for an illness during the past year. A sample of 65 adults is drawn. What is the probability that more than 60% of them saw a doctor? So I need to identify my variables here. The mean is the proportion of the population, which in this case is 56%. And we always record them as decimals if they're given as percentages. The standard deviation, we're going to calculate using the formula. So square root of 0.56 times 1 minus 0.56 and divided by 65. And that's going to give me 0.0616. Now the question here is, what is the probability that more than 60% of them saw a doctor? Since this is a probability question, we're going to use Minitab. More than 60% means we're doing a right tail, and our x value is 60% converted to a decimal, 0.60. So let's pull up Minitab. We're using normal distribution, and again that's allowed because of the central limit theorem. Our mean was the 0.56, and our standard deviation we calculated 0.0616. So when you're dealing with proportions, the values that you're going to be entering are always going to be decimals. And then our specified x value, we're doing right tail, and our x value is 0.60. Click OK. And that gives us a probability of 0.2581 if I round to 4 decimal places. So that's my answer.